Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers with me, Murray, your weekly fix of ancient warfare-related speculation and humming, whatever that is, cow cud chewing, to take you away from whatever's happening in your real-world life. Think about ancient warfare, nothing better. Anyway, what I do here is I attempt to answer a question from a viewer, listener, or reader. And you can ask me a question by sending me a postcard. You can send me an email, awa@ancientwarfare.com or caravanseraipublishers.com, murray@caravanseraipublishers.com. You can comment on a previous video or podcast. You can back us on Patreon, one of three different levels, Optio, Legionary, and Centurion, $1, $5, and $10. Get a copy of the magazine digitally or even in print. You can send us a question that way. You can, just follow along, yell on the street. I have a very interesting question coming up at a later one. Today, it's Jamie Peter. Thank you, Jamie Peter. Okay, so it's been asked before in a general sense, and the official answer is we don't know. But Murray, in your own opinion, what's the best guess as to why slingers go away? Please speculate. Lovely. Happy to speculate, Jamie Peter. Thank you. Now, it's fascinating, isn't it, that the sling as a weapon is ubiquitous for a while. It's cheap. Of course, we all know about David and Goliath. You know, you don't necessarily have to have training, but a lot of people are trained, a lot of the poorest sections of ancient societies are trained to be slingers anyway through hunting and protecting their flocks. David again comes up. And he's not even using sling bullets. He's looking for the perfect sling stone in the river. So in that sense, you've got slings easily transportable. They're light. The men who use them don't need armor or other protection. Therefore, slings are ideal. And then, of course, as we develop in warfare, we start to have units of slingers appear in warfare. And we've got them not only throughout the Bible, but also we've got them in ancient Greek warfare and then in other societies, ancient Near Eastern warfare. And they are flinging stones and later bullets, lead sling bullets, to devastating effect. Now, the peculiar thing is they are effective and begin to be mentioned in deployments. We have them, slingers and archers being deployed together in Alexander the Great's armies. So they're clearly effective. You've also got other types of sling. You've got staff slings, which go further. There are several societies in the Mediterranean who are known for their slinging, whether they be Rhodians or the Balearic Islands, for instance. And then I don't know whether it's because the idea of a sling wound is what a way to go, let's not talk about it. But we do get, the sort of the perception is slingers go away, whereas the reality is slingers don't go away. We have slingers shown on Trajan's column. We have references to slingers in the 4th and 5th centuries in terms of literature, even the 6th century. And so, hang on a minute, where do they all go? So, I'll speculate more as to what I think is why, but then some of the sources tell me that my speculation is wrong, but we'll get to that too. So you've got these slings, and obviously they're able to fire. It could be a rate of fire issue that leads to them going away. I'm not sure the amount of room they take up. Vegetius, writing in the 5th century AD, talks about the fact, and it's tricky because he's talking historically about the Roman legion, but at the same time he's talking about reforms that should happen to the legion now in the aftermath of the Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD. So tricky thing with Vegetius is he's any time from 383 to 453 is when he's writing. I think he's writing closer to Adrianople than later, but that's all up in the air. He says, recruits are to be taught the art of throwing stones both with the hand and the sling. The inhabitants of the Balearic Islands are said to have been inventors of slings, that's wrong, and to have managed them with surprising dexterity owing to the manner of bringing up their children. The children were not allowed to have their food by their mothers till they had first struck it with their sling. Soldiers, notwithstanding their defensive armor, are often more annoyed by the round stones from the sling than by the arrows of the enemy. Stones kill you without mangling the body, and the contusion is mortal without the loss of blood. It is universally known that the ancients employed slingers in all their engagements. There is the greater reason for instructing all troops without exception in this exercise, as the sling cannot be reckoned any encumbrance, and often is of the greatest service, especially when they are obliged to engage in stony places, to defend a mountain or an eminence, or to repulse an enemy attack of a castle or a city. So that's 4th or 5th century AD. And peculiarly, of course, Vegetius is mentioning stones, not lead sling bullets, which are far more ubiquitous from late Roman Republic onwards. And, things like Maiden Castle, where I think there's both lead sling bullets and stones found. So you can sling both. Now, that's 4th century AD. We then have an account by Procopius writing in the 6th century that you've got a Roman being killed by a sling, and that a Hun being killed by the sling, and that the sling had a greater range than the Hunnic bow. And again, there are estimates as to how far you can sling a sling bullet, 400 meters. And again, the estimates of accurate archery differ, but generally it's less. So you've got that issue of, hang on a minute, if you can sling a sling bullet or a sling stone further than an archer can fire, why aren't we encountering more slinging? And of course, the other thing is that if you have the account of a Hun being killed by a Roman sling in the 6th century, slings are still around, but they're far less part of the narratives of battles. And I wonder whether that's a status thing. But I wonder whether the reason that slinging goes away, but it doesn't, slings have stuck around in hunting and shepherding and other contexts into the medieval period and beyond to this very day, for the reasons that it's cheap and portable and all of that. But I do wonder whether it's a rate of fire. Now, there's some amazing videos on YouTube of modern day slingers and how incredibly accurate they can be. But how long does that training take? In which case you've got a very specialized unit. How long does it take to fire slings and reload and fire again? And how much room do you need? Whereas an archer unit can fire a lot more arrows in a lot faster period of time, don't need to be as accurate to create a mass effect. That's true of slinging too, that if you've got not inaccurate slinging, but if you have slinging that is a suppressive fire, very modern term to use, or a fire for effect, very modern term to use. I don't know why I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking down here. Sorry, very modern term to use. But at the same time, that could have an effect of deterring annoyance and, need for protection. But I wonder whether the rate of fire of a bow is greater, and that you could have, even despite the fact that there would be a greater distance, you would need to get your archers closer, for instance. You could defeat a slinger force with an archery force, perhaps behind heavily armored infantry force, that if they put their shields in place and fire from behind that, the slingers can't get to them, but they can be got to. And, again, armored slingers, and, that's sort of why have an armored slinger when you can have an armored infantryman? And slinging is generally an unarmored exercise. So I think there's a kind of a balance there as to why slinging goes away, and that is that it's not worth the battlefield real estate that they take up, that it's more training, they need more room to move as opposed to archers, and why armor them when you can have other troops who are armored? So I think it's that, but it's dissatisfying. And certainly in terms of when you look at the accounts and watch these videos of these YouTubers who can sling with amazing accuracy, why aren't there more slingers, even into modern conflict? So it's a very peculiar thing, but it certainly is evidence that they do go away, even though there's these little snippets which say that there are still slingers occurring in late Roman warfare. but much less so in the medieval period. And that's not just, a Roman or a Western thing. That's across the board. Slinging disappears as a form of fighting in battles in the late Roman period. You would think, for instance, that the Huns would go, right, we should get some slingers then, but that doesn't seem to happen. Greater range, why not have more of them? It's a very peculiar development of warfare that's going away, and of course, then later you start to have more effective ranged weapons, and so slings never get a comeback, except of course on your wargaming table. But I don't know of anyone in a wargame situation has an army of slingers. Maybe that could be a deal breaker. Anyway, join me again for another Ancient Warfare Answers. Thanks. Bye.